Are there any changes to the agenda?
I have no changes. I just want to point out that there's two agendas. So for the special meeting, if it can run concurrent with the regular meeting, it only has one item on the consent calendar. So if it can be considered as 5.12 on the regular agenda.
We have a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Vosper,
Aye.
Councilman Atkinson,
Aye.
Councilman Hedgecock,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez,
Aye.
Mayor Horn.
And I vote aye. Okay, next item, we've got two items for awards, presentations, appointments, and proclamations. So the first one's going to be a certificate of recognition for Westlands Water District 2023 West Side Scholarship recipient, Sophia Reyes Moreno of Coalinga High School.
I'm Elizabeth with Westlands. This is Sophia. If I may just speak a little bit about her. On behalf of Westlands Water District, thank you for the time to recognize our scholarship recipient from Coalinga this year. We had a very competitive process, 53 applicants, I think more than we had ever seen, and Sophia really stood out. She comes from Coalinga High, 3.57 GPA, has participated in multiple forms of athletics clubs, not limited to ASB and CTF, dual enrollment in several courses, has worked in employee and volunteer capacity in athletics, food service, sanitation, and services with children, and has served as secretary and treasurer for various clubs, so she kept busy. Her honors and awards include successes in multiple AP courses and other accelerated courses, 7-time Principal's Honor Roll, multiple Star of the Month winnings, and 1 silver and 1 gold medal in the Fresno County Academic Decathlon. She is headed to UC Berkeley to become a pediatric surgeon, but you're coming back, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to say a few words? And here's
Well, I'm just grateful for it.
We'll go ahead. Step here. Yeah, you don't get to walk away. I got a certificate for you. So I'm gonna read it out loud. I think she wants to take your picture too. Okay, certificate. The city of Coalinga is proud to present this certificate to Sophia Reyes Moreno in special recognition of her hard work and achievements that have led her to being chosen as the 2023 Westlands Water District High School recipient for the West Side. Congratulations. Here's your certificate.
Thank you.
You wanna, Mary? I wish you could put it in paper. Oh, yeah.
There you go. Oh.
Congratulations. My daughter's actually going into, she's gonna start doing the same thing you are next year. So. Okay, next item is Proclamation Building Safety Month. If I could please have Robert Smith to the lectern, please. Okay, the wording on this is a little bit winded, so I'll try to hurry up as quick as I can. Whereas, we're finished. Does that help? Okay, I'll be as quick as I can. Whereas the city of Coalinga is committed to recognizing that our growth and strength depends on the safety and essential role of our homes. Buildings and infrastructure play both in everyday life and when disasters strike. And whereas our confidence in the resilience of these buildings that make up our community is achieved through the devotion of vigilant guardians, building safety fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, design professionals, laborers, plumbers, and others in the construction industry who work year-round to assure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas these guardians are dedicated members of the International Code Council, a nonprofit that brings together local, state, territorial, tribal, and federal officials who are experts in the built environment to create and implement the highest quality codes to protect us in the buildings where we live, learn, work, and play. And whereas these modern buildings codes, where these modern building codes include safeguards to protect the public from hazards such as hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, wildland fires, floods, and earthquakes. And whereas Building Safety Month is sponsored by the International Code Council to remind the public about the critical role of our communities, largely unknown protectors of public safety, our local code officials who assure us of safe, sustainable, and affordable buildings that are essential to our prosperity. And whereas it starts with you. The theme for Building Safety Month 2023 encourages us to raise all awareness about building safety on a personal, local, and global scale. And whereas each year, in observance of Building Safety Month, people all over the world are asked to consider the commitment to improve building safety, resilience, and economic investment at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential service provided to all of us by local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and federal agencies in protecting lives and property. Now, therefore, by the mayor and the city council, we recognize and extend appreciation to our dedicated and skilled staff, and hereby proclaim month of May 2023 as Building Safety Month. In witness thereof, I have set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Coalinga to be affixed this 18th day, May 2023.
Need some water?
No, I'm good. Thank you. We're finished. Okay, now we'll move on to our next item, citizens' comments. This section of the agenda allows members of the public to address the city council on any item within the jurisdiction of the council. Members of the public, when recognized by the mayor, should come forward to the lectern, identify themselves, and use the microphone. Comments are normally limited to 3 minutes in accordance with state open meeting laws. No action will be taken by the city council this evening, and all items will be referred to staff for a follow-up and a report. Citizen comments submitted in writing to the city clerk by 5 p.m. on the day of the city council meeting shall be distributed to the city council and included in the record. However, they will not be read. Would anyone like to speak?
My name's Pat O'Brien. I live at 265 Grant at District 1. I have an issue with what's going to take place over there on Elm Street next to the Chinese restaurant. I understand that the guy that owns the old Guardial yard where all the junk cars are piled 3 deep has bought that property, and he intends to move a bunch of crap in there. Our town looks, excuse my French, but crappy enough as it is, without that being on Main Street. The weed abatement, I don't think anything's being done about that to speak of, because there's still this place looks like crap. And I live on Grant Street. There's maybe 20 houses, 22 houses on Grant Street. Half the yards are dead and a foot tall. People don't take care of nothing anymore. It's sad, very sad. We spend a lot of money on our yard. I put in artificial turf to make our home look better, and I gotta live next door to somebody that foxtails are blowing all over me all the time. So I don't know if there's a code ordinance to stop that wrecking yard from being on the main street of town, but if there's not, then there should be, and you guys need to make one. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Scott Netherton, Kalinga Chamber of Commerce. As most of you know, Horned Derby is 8 days away. We're getting ready, getting as prepared as we can. We are back at Olson Park for this year, as everybody knows. We also doing the softball tournament, Big Fred's. We have a lot. The park is packed. I mean, we're overflowing out into the streets right now. We have so much going on. We've got camel rides, we have pony rides, we have petting zoos, we have, dinosaurs, we have. One thing I would like to invite is, I understand the council is going to a team building next week. I would like to invite you all to participate in our tricycle race. It will happen at 2 o'clock on Saturday. In fact, I challenge you. So I hope to see you all there. Thank you, guys.
Any other questions?
You're killing me, Scott.
Council? Okay, we'll move on to public hearings. We have one item, consideration of zoning text amendment ZTA 23-02, amending the planning and zoning code related to smoke shops, and further introducing and waiving the first reading in ordinance number 860. Sean?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This was a future agenda item that was requested by the council, and so staff has proceeded with working with the commission on developing up a draft ordinance related to distance requirements for smoke shops. So on May 9th, the Planning Commission conducted a notice public hearing to consider a zoning text amendment and adopted resolution 023P-005, which recommended approval of the ordinance before you, ordinance number 860, to the City Council. Staff prepared an ordinance that establishes a definition for smoke shops and distance requirements for sensitive uses. The definition and distance requirements have been formulated to be similar to how the city regulates establishments that sell alcohol, such as liquor stores and bars. And that was kind of the suggestion of the commission on how to regulate smoke shops. Because in the way the code is currently written is that smoke shops fall under general retail. So anywhere typical retail is permitted, that's where that would be located. So a clothing store could be located a smoke shop could be located in the same location as a clothing store. So upon discussion with the commission, taking any public comment during the public meetings, within the commission meetings, it was determined to create a separate definition for smoke shops, and then also create additional development regulations for smoke shops, which would be related directly to location. And so with smoke shops, we have a definition, which is an establishment selling smoking and or traditional or electronic tobacco paraphernalia or products where 25% or more of the total floor or shelf area is devoted to selling tobacco products. Limited sales of tobacco products that commonly occur within convenience stores or service stations are not included in this definition. Smoking shall be prohibited within all smoke shops unless the establishment has been formally permitted to operate as a tobacco bar under applicable local or state laws. So we have a definition for smoke shops, and then the distance requirement was that no establishment shall be located a minimum of 500 feet from any other such establishment or any educational, religious, or cultural institution or public park. So it essentially won't affect any of our current locations, but anything new that's requested would fall under these regulations when being issued a permit. Now, they are permitted by right, so there is no conditional use permit or special permit for these types of establishments due to the request of the council, which was to address location. So if location is addressed, then there's not really any other conditions you're looking to put on a smoke shop unless there's other concerns that need to be addressed. So with that, staff feels that the zoning ordinance amendment meets the findings for a zoning text amendment, and this would be introducing and waiving the first reading of the ordinance, and then we would come back at the next meeting in July or June 1st for the second reading and formal adoption. So with that, it is a public hearing, Mayor, and I'll be willing to answer any questions from the council or public if they have any.
Anyone from the council have any questions?
I have a question. So, would this include the library as well?
I'd have to look at cultural institution to see what that falls under. I think the intent was that. We can always include libraries if you want it specific in there.
So, okay, this is an interesting question. This is for the city attorney. So, of course, I work at the library, but I have been asked that the library be included in this. And so how does that work?
Well, if you work, do you receive financial?
Yeah, that's my job.
Yeah, so it's not currently in there, so, but if it were to be added, then you would have a financial, basically, I'm looking for the right word, you would have a financial incentive
Okay.
for approving such
Libraries
amendment.
are included as cultural institutions by definition, so the libraries are included in this request. So when it says cultural institutions, it includes libraries.
Okay, but because it includes all cultural institutions and not just that library, and library's not specified, I can still vote on it, correct?
Yeah, and it is, it would be such a small speculative impact. It's not a direct impact to your specific library that you work at based on this
Okay.
amendment.
And then the second question that I had is that this was kind of a two-part deal. One was the smoke shops, and then second was the hotel motel deal as well.
So I can
Correct.
update the council. So upon discussion with the commission, when we were discussing some of the, especially specifically what was the reason for that being brought up, that if it sounds like based on the determination of the council and the commission that establishing and upholding the transitional standards for commercial and being adjacent to residential would suffice in terms of controlling locations for hotels adjacent to residential. So in the instance, what the concern that was brought up originally, that application actually required a variance from the transitional standards due to the existing layout of that site, that without a variance, that would not be permitted.
So does this fix that?
It doesn't, actually, unless there's specific criteria for hotels that the council wants to change in the code or create additional standards beyond what we call transitional standards, which are already in the code, then we would need those details from the council in terms of what you would look at. But the conclusion and the recommendation of the commission was to just uphold the transitional standards, which gives staff direction to an applicant that if they can't meet the transitional standards, that a variance would not be something that would be recommended or supported by the city council.
But can they still apply for the variance?
They can apply for the variance, but it would require the vote of the council or the commission in terms of approving that variance.
So it'd be just like the same way it was, then it wouldn't be any difference. They'd apply for the variance, we'd have a lot of people come and being unhappy, and then we would have to, that was kind of what I was trying to get away from was, hey, like, let's just set it in stone that if you're within the distance of a school or a sensitive place, that you're not gonna open up a motel or a hotel, like, period. Because like that in itself, I think was the problem. and I think the community was very avid about making sure that that didn't happen. And my thing is that, hey, if we've seen it happen once, and the community wasn't happy with it, and I think, we could make direction to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future, that we might as well just solve the problem rather than allow it to come back again and happen again. So is there any way to include that into here?
Not into this, but we can go back and we can push that. If there's a specific distance requirement that the council would like, we can do that. But it was really, that you gave staff direction to discuss that, have the conversation, the commission came back, and that's their recommendation, is to not make a change, because the transitional standards, in effect, would have restricted that. And so with that, unless the council has further direction for distance requirements from a school, because sensitive receptors in general or residential can be that, it can be cultural institutions, libraries, parks. So unless we have a little bit more specific direction in terms of what the council wants, because we have a hotel, the Best Western, that's directly adjacent to a residentially zoned parcel, but we instituted the transitional standards with the block wall setbacks to make sure that building is not directly on top of the residential, but those are an example of utilizing the transitional standards when you have a separation of use between commercial and residential.
Okay, so we could, as far as I'm concerned, this is just my personal opinion, we could move forward with this and then we can bring something else back.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. The existing smoke shops that are here now, is that going to, this ordinance, is it going to change any of them? Or is it like a grandfather, they'll actually be able to keep it, any new businesses will be affected by this only?
They would essentially become a legal what we call a legal non-conforming use. And so essentially they have to operate in where they're at. They have to operate in compliance of what the current standards were in place. They can't enlarge it. I think in the past we've brought back where someone wanted to add it, make a house bigger that was commercially zoned. It requires a special use permit. But essentially they are what we would call, you could call grandfathering in, but essentially it's a legal non-conforming use. So at the time it was established, it was legal. Now it's legal, but it's not conforming with the code.
So we have a smoke shop that's less than I believe less than the 500 feet. Is
Yes.
that going to be affected?
So essentially, if that store closed, I think the council extended the non-conforming timeframe to a year. So if it was vacant for a year, or if it changed use to, like, say, just a retail shop, it would not be able to go back as a smoke shop.
Okay, so the smoke shops are safe.
The
For now.
existing ones, yes.
Okay. Okay, we'll open it up to the public. Is there anybody have any questions or concerns on this item?
I have just a tiny question, and maybe you've already said it and I didn't catch it. So if the shop closed, you couldn't, another one couldn't come in, what if they wanted to sell their business as what it is, like if it changes ownership,
That's fine.
that's fine?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the use itself, not necessarily the ownership. It's the use. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, we're going to go ahead and close public hearing. Do we need to vote on this? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Vosberg,
Aye.
Councilman Atkinson,
Aye.
Councilman Hedgecock,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez,
Aye.
Mayor Horn.
And I vote aye. Okay, next we'll move on to item 5, consent calendar. We have 12 items. What would council like to do?
So I'd like to pull 5.2 just to be read so that the public, for the benefit of the public. I don't have any questions about it, though.
Anything else? Okay, So we'll move on to item 5.2. Marissa?
Thank you. Are you okay with me summarizing it? So the item on the agenda is directing the city manager to bring a resolution back for council consideration that would not charge late fees on utility accounts with alternative payment arrangements. So right now, if someone gets behind on their utility payments and they come in to set up a payment arrangement, we amortize their past due amount over a period of time, and they're required to pay current monthly and whatever payment arrangement they agreed to for their past due until it's caught up, but they still get late fees added to that past due every month. And so this would be directing me to revise an existing resolution so that we don't charge late fees on the past due utility amounts while they're trying to get caught up on their past due bills.
Thank you.
Council have any questions? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Vosberg,
Aye.
Councilman Atkinson,
Aye.
Councilman Hedgecock,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez,
I vote aye.
Mayor Horn.
And I vote aye. Okay, next item, we got 6.1 and 2, ordinance presentation, discussion, potential action items. First one is discussion and direction related to adding yield signs on Hayes Street. Sean?
I'm gonna ask my pro Larry to see if he can pull up Google Earth so we can at least kind of see what intersection we're talking about. I meant to ask him earlier, but he's good at this. So this is a future agenda item by Councilman Ramirez. I know we've been kind of discussing solutions at this kind of odd intersection on Hayes Street. And as Larry pulls it up, we'll be able to kind of see an idea. I know that we had presented a kind of a solution, I think earlier in the year, regarding trying to realign the street area along this intersection that has kind of multiple streets conjoining each other on Hayes and Harrison and Hawthorne. And so I'm going to ask Councilman Ramirez if there's specific things regarding just yield signs. I know you brought up that this discussion item was more towards yield signs and kind of what you're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I know we postponed the project that I had in mind. I would love to bring it back because obviously right after that there was numerous accidents, and it's it's hard to define who's at fault when nobody's stopping. So when that happens, that's why I wanted to get it done. Wanted to get that project done. And coming from Harrison, I think we need a yield sign there. I think that's, what is it, Fourth? Hayes and Third. Third or Fourth? Yeah, Fourth. It's Third? Yeah, so Third and Harrison. So we need to make sure that, I just want a yield sign there or something where the oncoming traffic from Harrison just, I mean, I've seen it plenty of times in front of me, and it just, something needs to be done there.
So we can do kind of some traffic modifications, unless the council wants to bring back the item. I think we can make it work within our street budgets to, if the council chooses, to do some of the improvements that the city engineer had originally proposed in that previous exhibit. So I think we could probably bring that back if that's something the council would be interested in. I don't exactly have the amount, but I can look it up. But we can try and see if we can fit that within the budget. With our street funds, it's not necessarily an annual, we do receive annual funds each year for street-related funds, but it operates a little differently than the general fund because there's a lot of things that overlap, projects overlap. So it's really a big pot of money that we produce and, design street projects and on an annual basis. So we do our best to prepare for the year in terms of what projects, but if it's something that comes up middle of the year, it's not, as long as we have the available funds, we can always undertake subsequent projects.
If
So if
council
that's
is
something
okay
the
with it,
council
yeah.
would like, we can do that as well. Or if we'd like to look at signage. I think there needs to be maybe a little bit more than yields. I know we all live in Kalinga. We know the whole valley gutter rule and and who yields to who. So I think that's kind of what's in play. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of valley gutters except for on Hawthorne, but I think I'm getting Hawthorne right? And those are in bad shape, which we're working on. So, but those definitely slow people down into the intersection. But it is a little bit weird, and that's really the orientation of the city's created some of these weird intersections throughout town. And so we can definitely bring that back. We can discuss it. We may be able to modify it a little bit if that pleases and if the council wishes, or we can try to put some signage up which you guys would be interested to.
Yeah, I mean, if the council is okay with it or like to bring that project and modifications, whatever works.
And I can provide you some examples of some of the other improvements that are included in our ATP 5 application, the grant that we received. There'll be crosswalks to that triangle from Harrison, east and west, and then north and south on Harrison as well. So there'll be some additional enhanced crosswalks along that area as well for pedestrians. But we can definitely bring that back, and maybe if you guys want to use that as the discussion, we can go there. And if the council chooses to move forward, we can move forward with that project anytime.
Sounds good.
The only thing I've seen in the last few months, it's probably been longer than that, but the southwest corner on 3rd and, is it Hawthorne or Dartmouth?
Hawthorne, over here.
Okay. There's been a motorhome parked there almost next to the corner, and you cannot see past that without getting halfway into the road before you even get by. So I know that's an issue too. I've had quite a few complaints.
Yeah, I think we have regulations on
Yeah,
72 hours, so.
But would that be something we can maybe mark, if we do end up changing the road right there, is it a way we can mark like a certain amount of feet of the corner, so that way there is nothing parked there?
We might be able to do something like that, yeah. Okay. We can look at that.
Any other questions, council?
I'm just going to suggest that we look also with the ATP 5 and kind of merge those projects together if you can get something to fix it, making sure that you're taking into consideration what we're already going to do. That way that we don't double up and you can do everything at the same time.
Yeah, we definitely do that, yeah. And I'll definitely advise the council if there is, just if something wants to be moved immediately, just to advise you that it may take a little bit longer just due to if it's already incorporated in another project.
How much does it take to put in yield signs?
Yield sign?
Yeah.
Robert probably knows. How much, Robert? He doesn't know.
Well, I'm just saying, if it's going to take a long time,
Maybe-
then we should put up yield signs to
The pole
immediate.
and pulling a sign, $100.
We should do something like that.
For now,
We
yes.
should do something like that immediately because that's been quite the problem there for a long time. And there's a lot of kids that go back and forth between school for there. And so I know that I said, hey, let's include it all in the ATP thing, but if it's going to take a long time, then we need to get some yield signs or something like that up.
We can do that.
So what do we need to do with this then? We need to hold off until you get,
Yeah, I'll bring
Whatever
back, I'll
costs
bring
are, then
back
bring
the
it back.
the other item, and then in the meantime, we can work on the yield signs.
okay? Real quick, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item. There's actually 3 items in here. I didn't see it on the last page. So the next item is 6.2, discussion, direction, and potential action related to reducing front yard lawn installations and for new developments. Sean.
So this was a future agenda item requested by Councilman Atkinson regarding new developments and the limitation or removal of the prohibition of turf. I apologize, my computer's not loading right now. So I think at the last meeting, we talked about what we currently have as an enforcement mechanism on new development when developers come in, which is the state, the California Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance. So in the staff report, I provided kind of a detailed explanation of what we call WELO, a long acronym. And the city back in 2017 or 2009, it's been in effect for a long time, introduced this. And so new developments are required to follow this lengthy ordinance. It was a landscape architect's dream because it does require a lot of calculations and developing what they call a water budget for new developments. And so I think if anybody has seen some of the newer developments, new houses that have been built in the last probably 5 to 7 years, you've seen, I don't know if we'd all agree that they're the most beautiful looking, but there is limitations on turf, as you can see. It doesn't stop owners in the future from adding it, but at least as new developments come in, it definitely looks at being more water conscious. I think I provided even some information here that it basically really looks at almost a reduction of 20 to 25% in typical water use if you just put like a full lawn in the front yard. So there's different opinions on how we institute this, but it is codified in our ordinance. We were required to adopt it. It's similar to like the building code where we adopt it by reference. I don't put the entire building code into our municipal code. We adopt it by reference. And so we reference the state ordinance in our regulations in terms of what's required to be enforced when new developments come in. And that includes both commercial and residential. And this is typically a condition of approval on any new subdivision map or any other requirements when folks are putting in homes, that they're required to follow this ordinance. And so I kind of gave a little breakdown of kind of the things that the highlights regarding plant selection, irrigation type, soil preparation, the use of mulch, and maintenance, and then also just the amount of turf. So basically it limits the amount of turf that's allowed, and then again, it establishes a water budget based on the square footage they have. So they have to work within a water budget to determine what plants, how much mulch, how much grass they can put in, based on how much water they're only able to use. So with that, if the council would like to move forward in a different direction or put a different kind of regulation in place, we would just be seeking direction from the council. If not, then we would just continue to operate the way we operate now in terms of new development.
What if the new developers had an option of putting in a percentage of desertscapes? I know there's a nice one out there in Fox Hollow that was put in. It's all rock with a few plants, but instead of putting in a small 10 by 10 square that the homeowner is going to want to make bigger eventually, if they had a certain percentage of the new houses that had a desertscape in the front yard that was nice, that they wouldn't want to go back with grass later, and they purchased it that way on purpose so they had less work to do, then you could have some houses with a little more grass or some with none, and it would keep our water usage down and make it to where they wouldn't want to put in grass in the future on those certain houses.
So I think you could do a couple of things. You could either do like a design standard when it comes to landscaping. That would be if we're not looking at turf and we're looking at more of a desertscape, then really it's gonna fall within this. And if you just say no turfs allowed and you want to do more of a desertscape rather than using like bark or other types of materials that float away when it's rain, we could do something like that and develop up type. We have residential design guidelines now, but there's not a lot pertaining to like landscaping. So if we wanted to establish that, it's just that whether we would want to move forward. Now, I don't have that professional expertise, and nor do my staff, so we'd have to hire a landscape architect or someone that would help us maybe design something with plant lists and whether it be irrigation type, something where developers can use in terms of saying, hey, these are the requirements for the landscaping in the front yard. They still got to be in line with the model efficient landscape ordinance, but it has to go more towards a desertscape style, which we might be able to work that angle as well in terms of updating our standards. Right now, it gives the developers kind of the ability and the flexibility to design landscape within the ordinance.
Well, if we're going long-term water savings, I think the desertscapes would help. If they knew that a percentage had to be desertscape, they would do them nice to where the people wouldn't want to take them out. Not just thrown in there, because a lot of the new developers just like the ones out behind PG&E. They threw in that 10 by 10 square, and the yards are very generic. And, you know, people want to move in and add grass, just like you said.
So I think the option is looking at maybe getting someone on board that would be able to help with design a little bit more aesthetically pleasing landscapes, especially depending on the developers and what they put in. Bark's really cheap compared to other types of materials, so they're going to go with the cheap material. So they may put in the 500 square feet or smaller square foot of, you know, grass, but then they're going to put in bark in the rest of the yard and then it becomes more of an issue with weeds and everything else, because they don't put the ordinance doesn't require like any kind of underlayments, weed barriers, anything like that, because they want to make sure the ground is as pervious as possible. So if we want to try to establish different standards, knowing what we've gone through in the last few years with drought, and then we know from examples of what residents have done, even through our program that we have, that there is some good looking landscapes that we could institute using more desert scape rather than just utilizing this ordinance and providing them more of a, but we'd have to come back and get some information from some architects and see what kind of costs we'd be looking at, and then maybe get some standards, and then we can adopt those standards if that's something the council would be interested in doing.
Yeah, I think we should probably figure out some sort of a percentage. You know, we can't force them to do all of it because some of these developers might not come if they're being forced to do one and not be able to compromise a little bit here, a little bit there.
I mean, cost is a big factor, you know, with home values being relatively low in Coalinga compared to other places. You know, developers can build the same home in Fresno for 3 times as much. So the margins are I've had lots of discussions with developers coming into town, and we unfortunately don't have as much flexibility in some terms of forcing strict design standards on certain projects, because the design standards to developers are basically cost. And so we really try to balance that. I think we do a good job at that with what we have in place. But depending on what kind of landscapes we design or put together that we can use for these developments, then, you know, we can make, if they're cost effective, there's definitely ways to do it.
Is there any way to get a hold of a few of just random land developers and kind of get their consensus on what they would suggest on a possible
could,
percentage?
But they're going to be they're going to tell you that's going to be too expensive unless we can actually have some quantifiable cost estimates built into these designs, at least now, seeing what these costs would be compared to what we're seeing in our developments now.
Yeah. All right. Give us something to compare at least.
If it's something the council would like to explore, we can definitely explore that. It would take some time, but we can definitely, if it's something the council's interested in.
Well, we have water right now, but I think we need to work on it for the future.
And I think even having just designs available for residents or for developers, I can tell you my communication with developers, they're very open to suggestions on what the community wants. So if we have things that the council and the community have engaged in and put forth for staff to be able to present to developers, they're pretty open for those types of recommendations.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do what Lonnie had mentioned, if possible. That way we at least have a better plan, give at least some more options, and maybe save the new homeowner or the land developer some money. Okay, I think we're good.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, next item, number 3, fiscal year 2023-2024 proposed budget discussion and direction. Marissa.
Thank you. So the only thing that's really different from this version of the budget from what you saw at the last meeting were the changes that I had stated we were going to make. And then there were some internal changes within the police department budget that really only impacted them. And so it was really just moving some money from one account to another within the police department. But this budget here would have a positive end balance in the general fund's annual operating budget of about 53,000. Let me get you the exact number. $53,774. So if council is okay with that, we would like to bring this to you for adoption at the June 1st meeting. And if you have any changes that you would like to make, just let us know.
Council?
So, staff spent a lot of time on this budget. I've spent a lot of time asking questions to staff so that I don't have to burden everyone here with my talking. So I'm just going to say that the summary page on the front that Mai did is amazing, and it's very easy to follow. And I appreciate all the hard work you put into that. And I think that this is even easy enough for a lot of the public that may not be so savvy with budgets to look at. So I appreciate that. So that's all I'll say.
Anyone else? Council? Okay, I think we're good. So we'll be,
Did the treasurer have anything to say on this?
oh, yeah,
Not at the moment? Sorry about that. Apologize.
that, you're okay, you're okay. Next meeting? Okay. Okay, so, we just bring this back to the next meeting, correct? Or can we vote on it now?
No, so you can't vote to adopt it today because the resolution's not ready for you to adopt it. But
Okay.
if you don't have any changes tonight, we would bring back this exact budget for the June 1st meeting and ask that it be adopted. That would be our last meeting during the current fiscal year. So we would either, if you don't think you're going to adopt it, we would need a resolution on there for continued spending into the following fiscal year. But if it is likely that you will adopt it, then there will be a resolution for your consideration to adopt on June 1st.
I believe council is willing to move forward as it is right now. Okay, next item is announcements, city manager's announcements.
I have none.
Council members?
I got something real quick. I was looking at the, one of the items on there, the code enforcement. There were 66 notices given out for weeds, 38 completed, 20 pending, and 8 people were cited. So they are working on making the town better, but weeds are growing fast too. And I also wanted to commend the Public Works Department on their safety, on their dig out in front of Granite. I went by there and was pretty pleased with all the safety stuff they had going on. I've been by digs in the past years ago where it didn't look very good, and they're moving forward in a positive way. It looked good. That's all I got.
Good.
So I just wanted to tell everyone that the library's having Fun Eats on May 23rd. It's going to be Twinkie Bees. Since Hilda's not here tonight, I figured I'd fill everyone in. And then also our summer reading starts on June 17th, and it's going to run until August 5th. And registration starts on the 17th. And then I also wanted to thank everyone that came tonight, especially those with concerns. That's the process, and we appreciate it. I appreciate it, so thank you.
Any other council? Good?
Oh, I'd just like to recognize Public Works and the Fire Department for their quick response on that hydrant that was hit. They took actions right away. Could have been even more dangerous, but it was a good thing that we have that kind of connection with the city, and just, thank you again for everything you guys do.
The only announcements I have is the Derby and the parade. I believe all the people that are gonna be participating, Scott, they're all already signed up and everything, or is there still room for a little bit more? Okay. So it's gonna be a nice long one, and it's gonna be nice and cool. It's only supposed to be 85. So, just so everybody knows, and no rain. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, future agenda items, council? Just the one from previous?
Okay, so, first future agenda item is I've been asked a lot of times about a low income section that we could make on our website that would basically have a list of low income housing, low income programs, assistance programs, and a list of the churches. If we could get that onto the website under a low income section. And I think that it would go great under residents and under resources. And then my second future agenda item actually spawned from a meeting that I had with the city treasurer. She had a really great idea that we have for some kind of training when we get on council or when we get a position. Like, you know, it's hard. You just get thrown right into the wolves. We're not wolves. Just saying. Like, you get thrown in. Not everyone, you know, has been attending tons of council meetings and knows procedures and knows what you can and you can't do. And so if we could have some kind of training for the council, for any elected official that is within the purview of the city, I think that would be great. And then the last thing is we got to investigate that situation on Elm Street. I don't know what the heck's going on there, but I hear the citizens loud and clear. I've heard that for the last week. People are really wondering what's going to happen. So if we could just investigate that issue, and I know that's a very broad term, but I don't know how that fits as an agenda item, but I'm sure you might
In
find
regard
out.
to what's going on next to the Chinese restaurant or the
You know,
traffic?
the Chinese restaurant.
Okay.
Right next to there. Yeah.
I believe it's 4.
Didn't that change?
I believe so.
It changed, right?
Yeah, because, everything changed, so we actually have to look at the map. I can get that information, or Councilman Hitchcock can. No, definitely not. They finally did cover it up, but yeah, that's a mess. Even the place that they moved from before was a mess too, so, yes, we will look into that. Any more items, council?
I'd like to just bring an item, we could kind of redesign our chairs. These are a little bit tearing up, and there's a lot of miles on these, so I know it's a little thing, but just the squeakiness is going a little.
hell I went through trying to do that before.
Oh my goodness. That's so funny.
If it could be done.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. We have item number 9, closed session. We have one item. We have no closed session items to report on. We have one to discuss. With that being said, the meeting is adjourned until June 2nd? June 1st, 6 p.m.